When I first moved into the apartment, I thought I'd scored the deal of a lifetime. It was old, sure, creaky floorboards, radiator that hissed like an angry snake, walls painted that strange yellow every landlord seems to love. But it was spacious and cheap, and for the first time in my life, it was mine. The landlord had been weird about showing me the place. He rattled through the tour fast, skipping the closet in the bedroom altogether. When I asked, he just muttered, "Storage. Don't worry about it." But the moment I opened that closet door, I knew something was off. The closet was too small for the space it occupied. From the outside, the wall stretched a good 8 feet. Inside, the closet was barely 4. Something wasn't adding up. For the first week, I tried to ignore it. I was busy settling in, starting a new job, making the place feel less like a stranger's house. But every time I walked past that closet, I felt it, that nagging itch in the back of my mind. By day 7, I couldn't take it anymore. I emptied the closet, pushed my head against the far wall, and started tapping. The sound wasn't solid. It was hollow. My heart thudded. There was space back there. I bought a cheap hammer from the hardware store and waited until after midnight to start. Something about doing it in daylight felt wrong. The plaster crumbled easily. Behind it was a thin sheet of wood, as if someone had deliberately covered whatever was beyond. It took me nearly an hour to break through. When I finally pulled the last splintered piece away, I found myself staring into a dark, narrow hallway. It wasn't on the floor plan. It wasn't supposed to exist. But it stretched on further than my phone flashlight could reach. I should have called someone. The landlord, the cops, anybody. Instead, I grabbed a flashlight and stepped inside. The air was stale, heavy with dust, but colder than the rest of the apartment. The walls were bare concrete, rough and uneven, like a basement that had been hidden away. The hallway led to a door, old, wooden, painted the same yellow as my apartment walls. I reached for the knob. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the flashlight. It turned easily. The door opened into a room. At first, I thought it was just storage. An old mattress on the floor, piles of newspapers stacked to the ceiling, a single chair in the corner. But the mattress had dents. Fresh dents, like someone had been lying there recently. The newspapers weren't old. They were dated within the last few months. And on the chair, perfectly centered, was a Polaroid photo. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a picture of me, sleeping in my bed. I dropped the photo like it burned me. It fluttered to the floor face down, but I didn't dare flip it over again. My stomach churned with a sick mix of panic and disbelief. There was no way someone had taken that picture without me knowing. And yet, there was. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the mattress. The stale air felt thicker now, suffocating. Every instinct screamed at me to run. I bolted down the narrow hall, back through the broken plaster, and slammed the closet door shut. But when I reached for my phone to call the police, my hand froze. What would I even say? Hi, I found a secret room in my closet, and someone's been taking pictures of me in my sleep. No one would believe me, and if someone had been living there, what if they were still inside? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with every light on, a kitchen knife clutched tight in my hand, listening for the faintest sound. The apartment groaned like always, the pipes rattling, the radiator hissing, but now every creak felt intentional, every shadow alive. At 3:17 a.m., I heard it, the closet door creaking open. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps came from the bedroom, but they never reached the living room. When I finally worked up the courage to check, the closet was shut tight again. The next day, I sealed the wall. I bought plywood, nails, anything I could find, and boarded the closet from the inside. If someone was living back there, I wanted them trapped. For a week, it worked. The nights were quiet again. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing, until I found another photo. This one was tucked under my front door, Polaroid side up. It was me again, sitting in the living room, knife in hand, lights blazing, taken from the corner of the room, where no one should have been. I called the landlord, furious, demanding answers. He was silent for a long time, then said, You weren't supposed to find it. What the hell is back there? I shouted. A pause. Then quietly, don't go in again. And he hung up. That night, the scratching started. From inside the walls. Slow at first, like fingernails dragging across plaster. Then louder, harder, until it sounded like something was clawing its way through. I pressed my ear to the wall and heard breathing. Deep, slow, too close. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I packed a bag and left. Slept in my car, then at a cheap motel. 2 days later, I went back for the rest of my things. The closet door was open. The boards I'd nailed in were splintered on the floor. And on the wall above my bed, written in something dark and smeared, were 4 words. Welcome to your room. I moved out that night. But sometimes, even now, I wake up to find new Polaroids slipped under my door. Always of me. Always from angles no one should have. The landlord won't answer my calls anymore. And deep down, I know why. The room isn't hidden. It's waiting. Story 2. The voice that lived inside the walls. When I signed the lease of the apartment, the landlord warned me about noise. It's an old building, he said with a strange smile. The pipes groan, the walls creak. Don't let it spook you. At the time, I laughed it off. I'd lived in plenty of old places. I figured I'd get used to it. But the noises here weren't just creaks or groans. They were whispers. The first night, as I lay in bed, I heard it, soft, muffled, coming from the closet, like someone muttering on the other side of the wall. I sat up, heart pounding, straining to make out words. It was too faint, just a hiss of syllables, like breath being shaped into almost speech. I convinced myself it was the neighbors. But the next morning, I asked the tenant across the hall if the walls were thin. She gave me a strange look. There's no one on the other side of your unit, she said. That's the sealed wing. Been empty for years. I should have dropped it there. But the second night, the whispering came back. Louder this time. I pressed my ear against the closet wall. It wasn't muffled anymore. A voice, low and steady, was speaking directly into my ear through plaster. Hello. I scrambled back, slamming the closet door shut, my whole body shaking. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined lips pressed against the other side of the wall, waiting to whisper again. On the third night, I tried to fight back. I dragged a chair into the closet, pressed my ear against the wall, and whispered, "Who's there?" For a long moment, silence. Then, faint but unmistakable, the voice whispered back, "You know me." My blood ran cold, because it did sound familiar. Not like a stranger, not like some random creep hiding in the walls. It sounded like me. The next day, I called the landlord, demanding to know what the hell was behind my closet. He was quiet for too long before finally saying, "Don't answer it." "What do you mean, don't answer it?" I snapped, but he'd already hung up. By the fourth night, I was unraveling. I tried blasting music, running the TV, anything to drown it out. It didn't matter. The voice always found a way through. Sometimes it laughed. Sometimes it hummed. Sometimes it just breathed, matching my rhythm until I couldn't tell if I was hearing it or myself. Then came the night it said my name. Not just whispered it, called it over and over, louder, until I was sobbing, pressing my hands against my ears, begging it to stop. But even through my palms, I felt the vibration, the sound of my own name, seeping into me. The worst part wasn't the fear. It was the recognition. Because deep down, some part of me knew the voice wasn't lying. I did know it. I just couldn't remember from where. By the fifth night, I'd made a decision. If the voice wanted me to listen, I wouldn't. I shoved the dresser in front of the closet door, sealed the cracks with duct tape, even stuffed old towels into the edges. I thought that would be enough. But walls don't stop voices. The sound just shifted. Now it came from behind the headboard, from the pipes in the bathroom, from the vents above my bed. And no matter where I went, it followed, always whispering, always me. By day, I tried to convince myself it was stress. Maybe I was sleep deprived, hallucinating, but the voice never let me rest long enough to dream. One morning, after a night of constant hissing laughter from the walls, I stumbled into the kitchen and froze. Scratched into the condensation on the window were words. 3 words. Let me in. I stopped going to work. Stopped answering calls. I sat in the living room with every light on, waiting. And then, on the 7th night, I broke. I shoved the dresser aside, tore away the towels and tape, and threw the closet door open. The voice was loud now, vibrating through the plaster, rattling the shelves. Hello, hello, hello. I pressed my hand against the wall. It was ice cold. Then, slowly, the plaster began to bulge, like something was pressing its face from the other side. I staggered back, heart slamming, as the outline of features appeared. Forehead, cheekbones, lips. My lips. The wall wasn't separating me from something else. It was a mirror holding me inside it, and now the thing in the wall wanted out. I don't remember much after that. Just the sound of cracking plaster, the shape of hands pushing through, my own voice screaming in stereo. When I came to, I was outside, barefoot, standing in the street. The apartment building behind me was dark, silent, but in the window of my unit I saw a movement, a silhouette, pacing back and forth. My silhouette. I never went back. I never collected my things. But sometimes when I stay in cheap motels, I hear it again. Late at night, when the pipes hiss and the walls creak. My own voice. Whispering. Waiting. Story 3. The Tenant Who Never Left. When I moved into the apartment, the neighbors treated me like I didn't exist. No welcome. No small talk in the hall. Nothing. Just cold glances and quickly shut doors. At first, I chalked it up to city life. People kept to themselves. But it got stranger. When I mentioned my unit number, 4B, people's expressions shifted. Tight, nervous, like I'd said a curse word. The woman across the hall muttered, "Didn't think anyone would take that place again," before slamming her door. Again, the word stuck in my head. The apartment wasn't awful, just old. High ceilings, cracked paint, a musty smell that clung no matter how many candles I lit. The bedroom closet was especially bad, always damp, always reeking faintly of mold. I figured it was poor ventilation, until the night I found the hatch. It was hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the closet, covered in dust and cobwebs. A square of wood with a small metal ring. When I tugged it open, a foul rush of air spilled out, damp and rotten. Below was a narrow wooden ladder, leading into pitch black. I should have left it, sealed it, pretended I never saw it. But curiosity always wins. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed down. The space below wasn't a basement. It was too small, too cramped, like a crawl space that had been carved out by hand. The walls were raw concrete, smeared with something dark, and everywhere, signs of someone living there. A pile of blankets in the corner, crushed cans of food, a cracked mirror propped against the wall, and scratched into the concrete. Hundreds of times over, still here. I scrambled back up, slammed the hatch shut, and shoved the dresser over it. But all night, I couldn't stop hearing things. The creak of the ladder, the faint scrape of nails on wood, and breathing. Not mine. The next day, I went to the landlord. "There's someone living under my apartment," I hissed, shoving the lease across his desk. "I found their little nest." "You knew, didn't you?" His eyes darted away. He rubbed his temples. Finally, he said, "You don't want to get involved." "What the hell does that mean?" I demanded. He looked at me then, and his voice was flat, tired. "Some tenants never leave, even when they should." That night, I woke to the sound of the hatch opening. Slow, careful, the creak of the ladder followed. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. Then a voice, low, rasping, cracked with age, whispered, "I never left." I lay frozen in bed, the rasp of that voice still hanging in the air. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to move, to run, but fear pinned me down harder than any weight. The door creaked, inching open. I couldn't see the figure, only the shape of a shadow stretching across the floorboards. Long, bent, wrong. I clutched the blanket like it was armor, forcing myself not to cry out. The shadow lingered, shifting like whoever or whatever was on the other side was deciding what to do with me. Then, just as slowly as it had come, the door clicked shut again, and the footsteps retreated, down the hall, back toward the closet. At dawn, I gathered the courage to check. The hatch was closed, the dresser unmoved, but on the wall beside my bed, drawn in what looked like dirt or grease, were 3 words. Still here too. I didn't call the police. Some part of me knew they wouldn't help. If I told them I had some squatter under my floor, they'd look, find nothing, and write me off as paranoid. And maybe I was, but I couldn't stay. I packed what I could carry and went to stay at a cheap motel across town. For 2 days, I tried to convince myself I was safe. I even started scrolling rental listings again. Then, on the 3rd morning, I woke up to the sound of scratching, not from the motel walls. From under the bed, I dropped to the floor, heart hammering, and lifted the dust ruffle. A Polaroid lay on the carpet. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was my apartment, my bedroom, taken from the corner of the room. In the photo, the hatch was open, and a shape was climbing out. I ran, checked out without even grabbing my bag. But the thing was patient. It didn't need to chase me. It knew I couldn't keep running forever. Every new place, every rented room, it found me, scratching on the floorboards, whispers through the vents, Polaroids left where I couldn't ignore them. Always the same message, carved or written or whispered in the dark. Still here. I don't know if it's a person or something older, something worse. All I know is it refuses to leave. And sometimes when I'm too tired to fight sleep, I hear the ladder creak again. The rasping voice closer than ever, breathing in rhythm with mine, whispering over and over, "You're mine now. I never left, and neither will you."